Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And folks, if you're not getting your political news from AMAC, then you won't be informed about American politics. And to all of our AMACers tuning in, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing AMAC news with friends and family. Go ahead and visit AMAC. Join over 2 million patriotic Americans who visit AMAC every day for information, news, and those discounts, folks. You can beat back inflation just tapping into AMAC discounts. You won't find those discounts anywhere else. Get the information you need with the ease you want and download the AMAC News app today. Now, I'm super excited about today's show. We have a great show. We have somebody who's just a real funny guy, very insightful, and I am delighted to have with us Tim Young. He is a voice of reason and persuasion, a columnist, and a thought leader. He's regularly read on the pages of the Washington Times, and he hosts his own high-profile show. He's seen by over 100 million people a month, and you may have seen him hosting the Congressional Spelling Bee, Accuracy in Media's 50th anniversary gala, or his On the Road show. Or maybe you read one of his books. They're laced with much needed humor. So today I'm privileged to have some of his time and the benefit of his insights. Tim Young, welcome to Better for America. Thanks for joining us.
Well, you made me sound successful there. Thank you. That was very.
Well,
I mean, I forgot some of this stuff. At this point, I forget like half of the things that I do. On top of everything now, like I'm supposed to be a stand-up comic, and I haven't performed in so long because I run so many things, and then get to go host a bunch of cool stuff and do the radio and TV and podcasts and whatever. And I miss it. Yeah, I've been working on a stand-up set, so that's been my new thing. I can't wait to get back on the road and say lots of horrible things on stage about everything.
well, we need some humor today. Boy, things are nutty out there. I do want to ask you, tell me about the hat that you've got on and what's behind you. What a great set that you're sitting at.
Okay, so normally I have a no hat on, but I have a bourbon hat on. It says BRBN on my hat without the vowels in the middle of it. And I have a monster collection of bourbon. So in the middle of everything else that I do, and in 2020, I've kind of become part of the bourbon industry. And I have a podcast called Let's Drink Bourbon on top of, again, everything else that I do. It's ridiculous when you think about it. And our podcast so far, we cover basically everything about bourbon and all the people involved in it, and a lot of musicians come on as well. My podcast co-host is Wes Henderson, who founded Angel's Envy. His father was the first person inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame, so his father created Gentleman Jack from Jack Daniels, as well as Woodford Reserve. And so far in our podcast, we've had Bill Samuels Jr., who was the current patriarch and son of the founder of Angel's Envy, who I believe is now 80 years old, but you would never know. And our very first guest ever was Brad Paisley. So we've got some really cool people who get to come on this and hang out.
What's the show called?
It's called Let's Drink Bourbon. It's very easy to find. It's wherever podcasts are sold or whatever they call it. I don't know how you say it, but you can download it anywhere. But I have a collection of about 700 bottles of bourbon. Believe it or not, you can have a collection like this. And I have not drank in 2 months. I'm on this crazy diet right now. So right now, I have a very expensive backdrop behind me, and I've been trained as an executive bourbon steward. I've gone through everything training wise. I'm essentially a sommelier, but for bourbon, on top of everything else that I do. It's really
Yeah,
fun.
you like to keep busy. You like to diversify and keep yourself in a lot of different places, which is really great. And you know, I've been following you and listening to you, and I think you would agree with me, Tim, that the loony left, I mean, they are way out there these days. We have so much to talk about, really. I want to ask you a little bit about the self-possessed Liz Cheney. That's Wyoming's congresswoman and the eldest daughter of former VP Dick Cheney. Boy, did she go down in flames. It seems like Liz Cheney will be the political gift who keeps on giving for the GOP. But she lost her primary not just by a few points, but by more than 35 points. And then she turned around and she declared that she's thinking about a run for president. Now, to over 2 million AMAC members who have watched, some of the January 6th hearings with total disappointment, the notion that a member of Congress could get swept out the door by her own party and then watch her declare that she might be a candidate for president seems a bit, I think, audacious. But you've had some insensitive criticism of Cheney and the Cheney duo. What do you think that this thumping loss really means? How would you interpret her loss?
It should be the end of her career. It should be. But I think, I mean, the more audacious part is that she compared herself to Abraham Lincoln. I mean, who can do
Ah,
that? Honestly,
yeah,
I know your members are old, but they're not old enough to necessarily have lived through Abraham Lincoln, but they are old enough to have had actual history classes and actually, studied what happened in American history. And for
right.
someone at this point in our history to declare themselves similar to someone like an Abraham Lincoln or even like a George Washington is so insulting, honestly, to anyone with any a bit of intelligence or knowledge about history. But for her to do that after losing by 37 points is just such a
Out of
I think
touch.
okay,
I call
yeah,
it.
it's an
Yeah.
out of touch thing. It's when you really take a look at politicians today, and you take a look at Democrats, and just even the GOP is guilty of this. A lot of people are so used to just looking at their internet followers or talking to their media friends, and they put themselves in this bubble, and they have a lot of yes men around them that are high fiving them every time they say something stupid, and that's probably
Mm.
one of the peak things here. Like one of the peak examples of somebody who is fed lines by their inner circles and the people who they're around. Because if they, I mean, how you can lose by 37 points and then come out and give a speech as if you're going to run for president, compare yourself to Abraham Lincoln is just, it's insane, right? Like when I get dumped
Nobody
by,
believes her. I mean, nobody believes she can win. I think the Democrats are making it so clear that they care more about Liz Cheney and her father really showing up to their cocktail parties than they do about the
yeah,
thousands of American people who died. You know, we have people who died in Iraq and the tens of thousands of people, who were left behind, or trillions that have been spent in the Middle East. But it seems like anybody who is willing to denounce Donald Trump, they're happy to embrace anyone. And I don't know how Liz Cheney doesn't see that.
yeah, I mean, so like when I get dumped by an ex-girlfriend, I don't declare myself the sexiest man alive. It's like one of those
Right.
things, right? It's such a weird thing, but like there's so much money and influence going through that Cheney family that it probably helps the little bubble that they're around. But
Mm.
this is the first time I think in 53 years that no Clinton, Bush, or Cheney is going to be involved in politics.
Mm.
So yeah.
You know, I want to talk about another crazy thing. This is on everybody's minds, and that's what we just recently witnessed. And that was a former president who had his home raided by the Biden Justice Department and the FBI. And we actually see 30 agents. They're armed with long guns. They're swarming his home. This is insane, and we've never seen this before. And apparently, this is what I think is weird. They waited 18 months to act and only served the warrant 2 weeks after it was signed. And we're hearing that they tried to intimidate staff into turning off security cameras. Then they took boxes, they took his passports, and they could have really just given him a call and said, can we access these things? But it seems like you would hear about stuff like this in a third world country like Russia or China, where the rule of law is really completely lost to political corruption. And we know that the public, trust in our institutions is plummeting. How do you see this raid? What do you think this means for the future of America? Were you as shocked as I was when you saw this?
Yeah, it's too far. And for them saying that he mishandled what is it, top secret documents or classified documents, there's no way that a president could. There's no way if he didn't take any documents beyond when he was president of the United States, beyond literally the second that Joe Biden became president, he did nothing wrong. And I think a lot of people don't realize that a president is the ultimate declassifier of anything. If he wants to go on TV and put the nuclear codes out, he can. That's a thing. I learned this from some policy experts and some legal experts the other day. His walking out of it, he could literally just take a box. I know he didn't, but he could literally just take a box of classified documents out of the White House, and by implication, it's declassified because he did it. He didn't do it that way though, and everything was under basically lock and key. I mean, he's secured there in Mar-a-Lago. If it's in his office, he's protected by Secret Service. So when you look at this, I'm not sure what is going on here, other than, again, not to use Trump's own words, but like it really seems like just another witch hunt.
Yeah.
There's no justification for it. They're screaming up and down. When the spin started coming out about this, they were screaming, "Oh, it's the nuclear codes." Okay, so say he did take the nuclear codes. Say he
Right.
did. Say he was this nefarious person. What's he gonna do? Sell it to another country, make sure America gets nuked, and then come and take over a dead country? I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing,
It's
because
crazy.
like the lie when they tell this crazy lie that like he's taking the nuclear code, so everybody's going to die. When he takes that ridiculous lie, or when the left runs with that ridiculous lie, they don't have this follow up. Like, so okay, so then what was the plan?
Right.
And that's a lot of times. You stop there, and stupid people listen to that part,
Right.
and then
Just
they
the sound
follow.
bites. Yep.
Yeah,
They miss
and
the
then
meat.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yep.
this, but I just say to myself, my gosh, there's just it certainly feels like a different world. If you look just 3 years ago, 10 years ago, I mean, it's like, is this even America? And we see Democratic politicians and their families that are getting away with things that would seem, in my view, to demand accountability. I mean, I don't understand. You look at how they started this false collusion probe to take down a political opponent, and then we see what Hunter Biden is doing. Um, we see that they were securing big contracts with Ukraine and China while being carted around the world, and it really turns the stomach of so many people when we think that our government, really needs to be accountable to us, and they're not. Do you think that we're really truly facing like a new level of public corruption?
I don't know. I mean, if everything's corrupt, what do you do? And that's the fun part about talking to older people on this podcast is not you, of course, but I think a
Thank
lot
you so much, Tim. I am
of
over
people watch.
50.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
A lot of people have watched this country get more and more corrupt. I mean, but so when you look at it, do you say have we always been this corrupt? And just because like the internet and citizen journalism has peaked
Mm.
and has gotten more popular, it's just getting more exposed. When you take a look at the bias in media, you see Dan Rather, who is a blathering idiot on the internet, a very very big leftist on the internet. He for years pretended to be a non-biased journalist. Will we know that if we didn't have social media and the extent of the internet that we have now? I mean, that's one of those things, right? So it's really kind of a deep question: are we more corrupt than we are now? Sorry, have we ever been more corrupt than we are now? And
Right. Or are things a little bit more
more lights, more
transparent?
spotlight.
Yeah, more
Yeah,
spotlights, and also the things that we couldn't say before, or that you couldn't show somebody before, people are now ramming down our throats. Like,
yeah.
it's like it's weird. I don't know how else to describe it, but it just seems real odd to me that the culture of America is changing. And if you don't go along with, adopting and embracing all of these new ideas and ways to be, things like critical race theory and indoctrinating our children so young and teaching them things and people are saying, no, this is really good. You want to teach little Sally at 3 years old that she can be a boy and that the way, being born a girl means nothing. I mean, or you can't define a woman, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It,
Go ahead.
there's so crazy. I mean, when you talk about CRT, like everyone's a victim, and nobody's ever been. There's been so much racism in America or whatever. Last night I was having a conversation really late night with a good friend of mine about comics in the 80s and 90s, and right off the bat we were talking about prominent African American comics in the 80s and 90s, and overall prominent comics top three were like Eddie Murphy, Bill Cosby, and then Arsenio's probably somewhere in the top five or so. Arsenio Hall. I mean, they're in every movie. They're starring on television and whatever. And then when you would think that we never had prominent African Americans in our society, just in general, if you listen to the role of the left, and that's how they're pushing CRT to again dumb people who don't ask questions, dumb people who don't move forward. Um, prominent women in society when they say there's never been female heroes in movies before, when Marvel's pushing like Captain Marvel and saying everything has to be feminist and stuff now, with modern films, and these studios are again pushing all this narrative that we've never had women,
That
we've
we've
never had black people doing things, and they've been everywhere in
Yeah.
super prominent shows, and I'm just thinking to myself like, what, how are people still believing this? You have to literally be so uninformed and not ask questions and not look outside of it, or not
Ignore
literally read.
history. Yeah, you got to
Yes.
entirely ignore history to believe that. And that's where I think the younger generations are so vulnerable to believing the lies of the left, because if they're changing our history books and they're removing uh, our founding fathers, and they're tearing down statues. I guess you can teach a narrative, you can play into, and teach these young people anything. And this is where parents need to be armed with the truth, and grandparents. We need to stand up and say that these are our children. We're in charge of our children, and get back to some basic common sense. And that's what we're here, we're praying for that here at AMAC. I do want to ask you, Tim, that you recently tweeted that on top of Biden trying to send 800 million to Ukraine, that we've added 87,000 new IRS agents. And to make matters even worse, one of the main job requirements for these IRS agents is that they must be actively trained on how to use firearms. And, I laugh because it's like, I don't know what else to do. I saw a picture surfacing with these agents being trained, and it clearly shows that they're not holding the firearms correctly. And people on the internet are really tearing this picture apart, not only questioning really the legitimacy of the training, but the reasoning for why our government would require this in the first place. I think that's also a bizarre twist on what it means to even be an IRS agent. So what are your thoughts on this, on the IRS and them coming after people like you and me?
Because that's who they are going to come after. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was, I believe, a 5-minute training video that they leaked as well to try to, I guess, I don't know if they were trying to ease people's minds or what, but it was a bunch of sloppy idiots. It looked like that they
Yeah.
were training. I mean, really did. It looked like worse than police academy. And it was these people who, like, I shouldn't feel like I can outrun a law enforcement officer, but the IRS, I got no problems with that.
Right.
But like, they are, so even in their little training video that they showed, they were going after some guy, like, and they arrested some guy who was running a landscaping business, and they're like, that guy's the bad guy because he sold like tractors separate from his landscaping business. It's like, really? Like, that's who you're going to arrest and point a gun at, and that's we're supposed to feel at ease seeing this video. This is ridiculous at this point. And I mean, if they're going after someone like that, like, I mean, don't we have real crimes in this country? I mean, are the IRS agents going to arrest members of Congress who have learned how to insider trade? I mean, does that count for anything anymore?
Mm.
There are so many elements of this that are insulting, again, if people don't ask questions, but show kind of total government overreach, and should be scary to everybody. But I think where the rubber meets the road here, and the real test is if Republicans retake Congress and retake the White House, if they actually get rid of these agents or they keep them. And
That'll be interesting. I think
they
that'll
didn't
happen.
replace Obamacare. So, when they had the opportunity to, when Trump first came into office, all of a sudden everybody who said day one we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, they were like,
Couldn't get it
we're
done.
busy today. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so there's so much overreach that has to be overturned once Biden is out. I just want to see if they're actually going to do it. And if not, we've got to vote all these people out if we can.
If we can. And I want to point to one more tweet. You recently tweeted that 8 of the Republicans who voted to impeach Trump aren't coming back to Congress, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult for the corporate media to deny what that means. Sorry, I'm all tongue twisted today. But anyway, I love that tweet that you put out. Can you elaborate on what you think this means for the midterm elections?
Should be a blowout, but we'll see. Again, we'll see what it looks like. We'll see if there's mail-in voting again. I don't trust mail-in voting. I don't trust drop boxes for ballots, and we'll see what happens. But it should be a complete blowout. This shouldn't be anywhere close. I was asked by a couple of major groups to run for Congress this time. I go back and forth debating whether or not I should have run for Congress because I would have won in the district now. Like, looking, I won't talk about too deep. It's not the current district that I live in, but it's an adjacent one. And I kind of, I'm 50-50 on whether or not I would want to actually be a member of Congress or continue being a mouthy person who nobody cares what he says, unless he says something totally wacky. But it's
We need good people, Tim. We need good people to stand
yeah.
up, people who've got courage. I mean, I think it's insane that they call it racist to have to show your ID to go vote. But yet, if I want to buy a bottle of your bourbon, you're not, you've got to verify that I'm of age, right? And so, I mean, you've got to, you can't drive a car without a license. There are so many things you need a license for.
Well,
They ask for a license if you buy the Jewel Pod, if you buy cigarettes, if you buy liquor, beer, you name it. If you're jumping on a cruise ship, you name it, right? And
I
in this
just my
case,
favorite Yeah, my favorite part of that is, I grew up in Southwest Baltimore. We were a white family in the hood, and it's such a slap in the face to minorities because that's what they're saying is they're
Right.
essentially, again, the left is saying that black people are too stupid to be able to get IDs, and it's like, or too poor to get IDs, which are free. And it's just such a total slap in the face to every minority group and every black person that they say that everybody has an ID,
That's
period.
right.
Like it's just so insane, and it's so completely racist. If we want to scream racism at things, that is actually racist.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So much. I mean, can you imagine a president saying, I will only nominate a white male to the Supreme Court? People would say,
I'd have a chance.
what? Right? But you're allowed to say, I will only nominate a white, black female. The world is backwards, upside down. The left is loony. Boy, there's so much here to talk about, but I appreciate your time. It has been so great to have you on, and I do hope to have you back. And I want people to go check out your bourbon. Anything else? Tell us how we can find you, how we can follow you for those listening.
Well, if you want to follow my foul mouth rantings on the internet, you go to @Tim_Mouth on most social media platforms. I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Getter. I would prefer people go to Getter, and my DMs usually stay open on Getter, even though I have about 150,000 followers there. And so I like to respond and interact with people, and I also fill in. I'm the regular fill in on everything on Sirius XM Patriot. So if you guys are listening over on Sirius XM, I'm there all the time.
Tim, thank you so much for what you do and for really your clarion call to pay attention and to stay engaged and for your voice, for your writing on air and in your books. It's so important. And we appreciate all that you are saying and really doing. And it reminds us really how vital it is that we must stay engaged. It's a reason why we do this show. You are better for America. And we're so thrilled that we had you on today. So thank you so much.
You're far too kind to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I want to thank all of our AMACers out there tuning in. Thank you so much for being here. And if you haven't downloaded the AMAC News app, you can do that. You can watch this show, track breaking news right there on your phone. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, follow, share wherever you are on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.